Hey guys, how's it going? Your friend Jim here with another video. I'm gonna show you a quick tip on the Montero. I'm having an issue with the Montero. It's turning on the check engine light on, and it's setting lean codes: P0171, P0174, lean bank 1, lean bank 2. And sure enough, if you look at the data list, the long-term fuel trims are at 12.5%. So I think that's the limit before it triggers the code. But it is on both banks, basically bank 1, bank 2. It's not a low fuel pressure issue, I know that for a fact, because it's got pretty good power on the highway when you accelerate, so it's not bogging down or anything like that. There is a common place where these 3.8 liter engines get a vacuum leak, and I'm suspecting that's the issue, because I'll show you here in a minute. But here, let me turn the camera around. I'll show you the data list real quick. So there's that DTC P0174. We go back to the data list, data stream. And when you select all the data items, obviously the refresh rate is a lot slower, so it's always a good idea to do a custom data list, and it's very simple to do. So we're just going to do the fuel trims. Add that guy, add this guy, and then we'll do the O2 sensors as well. And we will do the short-term fuel trims. And then now we have this data list here. As you can see, long-term fuel trims are both 12.5%. O2 sensors are fluctuating back and forth. I mean, the computer's trying to adjust for this vacuum leak, so it's trying to catch up. You can see the short-term fuel trims also pretty high as well. The computer's trying to add fuel. O2 sensors are dropping pretty low, but it's normal for the O2 sensors to cycle like that. However, it has reached the limit, and here's where the vacuum leak is basically. And there's some YouTube videos that show this, but the shaft for the butterflies that go on the bottom intake manifold, that section right there, there's an O-ring, and with the heat and with time, it just becomes brittle and it causes a vacuum leak. Kind of like my oil filler gasket that caused the oil leak. In this case, brittle brittle O-ring is causing air to go in there. Now, one quick thing you can do is get some carburetor spray, like this one here. Alright, I know it's a little risky and some people don't like to do this, but it's actually not that big of a deal. So you can notice the difference on how the engine's running when I spray carb spray down there. Now when you do this, be careful not to hit the fan down there. So you point the carb spray at that little area there, as I'm going to do here, and then listen to how the engine changes. See that? Okay, so that means that this section there is sucking air, and when I shoot the carburetor spray in there, it sucks combustible fluid in there, and then it tries to adjust for whatever it was adjusting for previously. So I'm gonna go ahead and proceed with the replacement of that thing, which means this has to come off again, and then I'm gonna go ahead and change the O-ring. Alright guys, so I got the upper intake manifold off the vehicle here. Basically removed all the items here in the front and on this side, and the manifold comes up. So not a big deal. I've done it before. It's not really that much of a big deal once you do it a few times. Anyway, here it is right here, and I have all the items here in order, everything that came off, so it can all go back together easily once I start putting everything back together. So today, as I mentioned before, the air leak is from that little area there. There's an O-ring inside this little plastic thing, and that O-ring, let's see here, so we have to remove this pin using this punch. And from what I understand from the information I've gathered, this side is a little bit narrower than the other side, so you want to push it out from this way instead of from the other side this way. So basically you're punching it out towards the throttle body side, from this side towards the throttle body side. But before we do that, I'm going to take this little nut off this rod just to get it out of the way. There's like an adjustment screw here with this little nut on this side. I'm not gonna mess with this at all. I'm not gonna touch that. I'm just gonna take this off, take that pin out with this punch, remove that little plastic piece, and then put a new O-ring on it. So let's go ahead and go through that here real quick. Alright guys, so we're gonna start taking this thing off. Okay, so see, I can move it fairly easy. Alright, so now we gotta punch the pin out. Well, I got this pin started. It's it's a little bit tricky because first you have to get it going with the 1/16th punch, and then continue with the 3/32 punch. But it's already started. It's about a quarter of a way through here, but I'm just going to keep pushing it out until it comes out on this side. Actually, gotta make these gaps. There. So here it is right here, and it is a little bit narrower on this side than on this side, and you can kind of tell if you look closely. So remember, it's got to come in from the throttle body side in here, so always remember that. Alright, now we got to get this thing off. Alright guys, so as I mentioned, I got the pin out, and the other thing you have to remove is this little plate that goes on here. There's a little plate with 2 machine screws. So take these 2 screws off, take this little plate off, this guy, because it's almost like a lock for this thing. So once you get this off, then you can take this off. So here it is. Well, O-ring is pretty flat. I mean, it's just rock solid. Look at that. Okay, it just broke off. Just broke apart. So, it's not really an O-ring. It's almost like just like a seal, like an oil seal. Basically, it is an oil seal. Well, not really an oil seal, but because you can see it's got like a little groove right here, so it's not quite an O-ring, but I'm sure an O-ring right here will do the trick. So let's clean it up and put a new O-ring on it. Alright guys, so as I mentioned, I got the piece out here, so I'm gonna clean it up already, but I'm gonna lube it up, put a new O-ring on there, and then it's gonna go back on this thing. So just so you know, the O-ring that I'm going to use, I got this from Harbor Freight. It's an assortment, $5 at Harbor Freight, and we're going to be using this O-ring right here, a 9.8 by 24 millimeters. One of these guys here. This guy will do the trick. And I got this information from the video that Owen Montero, one of the guys in the Facebook Gen 3 community, he made a video doing this job, and he mentioned about this O-ring that would work for this job. He had done a few other ones like this, and they had gone for several thousand miles and without any issues. So I'm pretty confident that this O-ring is going to take care of it. As you can see, we had the vacuum leak, as you saw earlier in the video. We had the vacuum leak affecting the idle and affecting the long-term fuel trims, giving me a P0171 P0174. So again, pretty confident that this O-ring is going to take care of this issue. But anyway, we're going to lube it up with some silicone grease, which is this stuff here. So this stuff should work pretty well for this. So let me get everything set up and I'll come back with you guys. Alright, so we're getting ready to reinstall this in there. Some grease on there. And since we're in here, we're going to just kind of clean up inside here. So this is how you know that the piece is aligned properly with the hole, and that way your pin can go in all the way through. There we go. So the piece is back together with the new O-ring. Everything is back together normal. The two bolts that are holding this little locking plate, I did use a little bit of Loctite on the threads just to be sure. And then everything just went back in. So now I have to put this thing back on the Montero, and as I mentioned earlier, I am going to reuse this gasket. Now, funny thing about this gasket here, the intake manifold gasket on the Montero. Alright, depending on what part of the repair manual you look at, if you look at the exploded view of this item, it shows this gasket with this little tab pointing to the front of the vehicle. I'm sorry, pointing to the rear. And if you look at the removal and reassembly procedure on the repair manual, it says this little tab has to go to the front of the vehicle. So I've installed it with this to the front and to the back, several thousand miles each way. It does not make a difference. It can go either way, this to the back or to the front. I like putting the gasket with this little tab towards the back because when you're installing this guy, you can reach around and you can feel this little tab and you know that it's properly aligned to the bolt. So that's the only reason why I like to do it that way. So we're going to reuse this gasket and then we're going to go from there. All right. reinstalled everything, the upper intake manifold, started the engine just now. Remember, when you do this job, you lose a little bit of coolant, so you have to raise. What I do is I raise the vehicle up from the front a little bit so that it can be leveled, and then I add the coolant, as I explained before on previous videos. So I just got it running just a little while ago. It's still in open loop, still not warmed up yet, but I do have the scan tool hooked up right there, and we're gonna see what's going on with the long-term fuel trims. Remember, before I did the job, before I replaced the O-ring, the long-term fuel trims were at 12.5. They were pegged at 12.5, both bank 1 and bank 2. So let's see what they're doing now. I'm gonna take the camera off the tripod here. So remember, when this job gets done, you disconnect the battery, so everything resets back to normal, back to zero. So right now we have long-term fuel trims at 0, short-term fuel trims kind of reacting to what the O2 sensors are doing. So I'm gonna take them for a test drive, go pick up my son from school, and then I'm gonna come back and read them again to see where they're at. All right, guys, see you guys in a bit. Alright guys, so we're pretty much done with this job. Thank you so much for watching. I've driven the vehicle so far 5 miles. I'll keep an eye on the long-term fuel trims and everything else, obviously. But after I got done installing everything, I obviously started the engine. Everything started fine. I made all the connections here, and everything here. Everything is back to normal. And one of the ways I know that this repair actually worked is because when I spray carburetor spray right there in that area, after everything was installed, there's absolutely no reaction to the engine. So I know that it's not sucking air from there anymore. So once again, thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you on the next one. Please subscribe and share and like this video. I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys. See you on the next one. Bye bye.